I'm Lori C. I do nothing. I'm just very passionate about being a woman and women's rights.
Because of course, like how I mentioned to you before, like it's been something I've been thinking about for a while now. And we're definitely gonna get into like a lot of things. And I think the first thing is of course talking about how media has shifted from, being a girl boss to now, now being a trad wife is the thing. And what was another thing other than trad wife, or being a stay at home mom and things like that, and like desiring more of like marriage and like also children as well. I guess why do you think I guess that shift happened? Like how there was a lot of videos again like how to be more independent, how to I guess like kind of get your own, and to now it's kind of like relying more off men and not being so independent. If you maybe want to get into it
Yeah.
first or. Mhm.
Um, I feel like I feel like well, I was actually just watching a video about the video was basically like people being shocked at seeing BBLs out in public, like not in their natural habitat. And it touched on how like back in the 2000s and everything, like the concept of like the video vixen, like curvaceous women and like just like beautiful women like being beside like these rappers and singers and everything, and like they were solely for the eye candy, and they were like used to kind of like represent the status of this guy, usually typically. And i think I think it kind of relates to the, I guess, like rise of like the conservative trad wife like type of thing that's going on. Um, One, because I think some women, sometimes within a specific race group that is paler than you and me, they don't want to be seen as like the other side of what these women are going for, which is like the hypersexual, the hyperfeminine, the super like, I guess, like boisterous like type of woman that you would see nowadays. Very like sex positive woman. Um and I feel like whichever way that you look at it, it really is telling of like the current time that we're in. Um like I said before, I think also the rise of like just conservative like, I guess, pop culture and like influence, and like streamers and like these YouTubers like Sneeko and like Andrew Tate and all those other kinds of people that are like pushing this content out and like kind of uh perpetuating the idea that women are only to serve men. They're only to make men look good.
And that also plays into religion as well, mainly Christianity, how um I've seen comments before where it's like, I think in the Bible where it says somewhere, I'm not too sure, I'm not too really educated on the Bible, but somewhere it talks about of like, I think a woman having to serve her man or something like that. But I've also, thought about, of course, like when women, becoming, I guess, more religious, it's like people say, like, I think it's them wanting to, they become more religious in order to find a man, because they weren't really like that before. Like, how somebody, like, I guess their content is very much, open-minded and stuff like that. But then, like, it shifts out of nowhere into like again being conservative and also being religious as well. There's a lot of examples of that, but people do say maybe it's out of trying to find a relationship, and then it also becomes I guess performative as well because this woman is not really being religious for I guess religious reasons. It's really to find a relationship. What's your opinion on that?
I think that's definitely one way of looking at it. I feel like a lot of times uh I think women now that are becoming religious for seemingly no reason, usually, from what I see, it kind of comes from a place of like being feeling like they're being shamed if they were like on the, like I said, like hyper sexual, like the sex positive side. Um and it could come from solely just a place of like the fear of like societal perception. um it could be like family trauma, with like male figures and male influences, and anything else that happened. um and I think, of course, there's nothing wrong with like one becoming more in touch with your religious side. But I think when you want to like disguise a certain part of yourself as being one with God, and you like suppress a certain part of you that just it feels better than what you're expected to be, and also the only part that it serves is for like other people. Basically, it's for you to like serve other people, even if it is for like a relationship. I feel like that in turn is kind of not helping yourself.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Euphoria, how I noticed that with season three, there's like this religious theme going on. I don't know if you watched the first episode, but it starts off with like Rue talking about how, if she, I don't know, was more religious growing up, that she would be more happier and, not really into, wouldn't have a substance problem. But then I also think about like Cassie and then also then Maddie as well. And I think we were gonna also talk about like their dynamics and how both women kind of, I don't know, I want to say split up the fandom, but I've observed that, that one side favors Maddie and then the other side also favors Cassie. But now it's like everybody's leaning more into Maddie because I feel like right now we're kind of, I don't know if this is like an outside thing or maybe just an online thing where we're seeing more of content, women being more open, expressing themselves more, being more confident. And this also ties into, women talking about, be your own boyfriend or, be more independent, stay single, or, focus on your goals, your ambitions, and, things like that. And then I guess the side that used to favor Cassie, or there's some people that do favor Cassie. I've seen comments before when season two came out where people were understanding Cassie's side when she got with Nate. And I just couldn't really understand it at first. I was like, it just seems like people are justifying her because of like what she went through. But then at the same time, I'm also not justifying her actions, but also understanding what she went through. Because again, like the last time she saw her dad was like he was a heroin addict, so she didn't have really have a male figure in her life. And again, talking about how male-centered women and you know there's a reason why they center men in their life. It has to come from a reason. This doesn't come out of nowhere where it's like they're trying to dress up for male validation or the way they act or the way they talk and stuff like that. Like there has to be some reason. So do you feel like, people should at least, I guess, be more, what's the word? Not caring, but maybe understanding of like women who crave male attention.
I think people should understand that these things do happen to women. I feel like it's it's not that people should be like excusing their behavior, of course not, but I think it happens to so many women around the world whose dads leave, who dads don't talk to them, whose dads just don't care to like know them or their life, or even if they have like brothers, that they will of course pay more attention to the boys than to them. um I know so many people like that, and I know a lot of male centered girls who stay stuck. They choose to stay stuck in the situations that they do because they cannot accept like facing this trauma. They cannot accept that sometimes you will have to let go of somebody in order to heal from that. And I think Cassie's character, I watched the like almost the entirety of season 1 again before watching the first episode yesterday, but I I I saw like very clearly, and this is one thing that I think season 1 does very well, is showing how much this like distorted view of male figures affects Cassie and also Maddie. And Cassie, of course, like her dad left. Her dad just stopped calling, like she said. Um, and then she goes on to high school, and her body is growing. And I think even if she didn't like physically look the way that she did, she would still have the same feeling of like, I need to hold on to whoever I'm dating and do anything that will make them happy and not leave me because I need that validation. And there was like I don't know if you remember, there was like a whole like scene like showing the boyfriends like videotaping her and like, coercing her basically into like having sex in order to make them happy. And in the end, like she even got the abortion for McKay because she was afraid of him leaving. And they still broke up anyway, but she wanted to keep the kid, no matter how old she was canonically. Um, but I think it's definitely like it's very realistic. Very realistic. And I think in Maddie's case, like it's basically the same thing. You're holding on to this toxic abusive relationship because we also see her family, like her mom and her dad don't talk. They're in the same house. The dad seems like very doesn't give a shit like at all, like does not care about anything. Even when the whole like choking incident happened, he was just sitting there like, well, I don't know. And that was kind of it. And it was just like, I understand why she is comfortable in the toxicity because the opposite of that is her mom and dad. And she doesn't want that, clearly. So I think I think people should definitely be empathetic. And I think people should not be wholeheartedly blaming the woman for like, behaving the way that she does. Of course it's wrong and she should learn to like, get some therapy for that. But at the end of the day, it's the cause is a man. Most times the cause is a man. And I think the whole point of like I guess true feminism, like the definition of feminism at its core really is to like understand that these things may happen to you, but you can't let them define you as a woman, if that makes sense.
That completely makes sense. I was thinking also, like what you were saying, how basically both Cassie and Maddie, both of them, didn't really have active fathers in their lives. And the relationship that, how can I say this? Sorry, I'm trying to find a way to articulate it. Yeah, they both didn't have active fathers in their lives. But it's so interesting to see how that effect, really makes their personality. How again, like with Cassie needing more male validation, while in another case with when it comes to Maddie, it's like, how can I describe her? I think she was really, fighting for the relationship she was with, in with Nate. I think in some way, like how you mentioned, like she does not want the, I guess, love that her parents have, and in a way is trying to, I guess, I don't know how to say it, trying to, I think, make the perfect relationship in her head. I don't know if that makes sense. Like they're both fighting for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
mm.
I totally see that.
But yeah, and then I also think about, of course, like, speaking, when fighting for relationships, I also think about like Beyonce and like also kind of going into the whole like bird discourse and how that word has been used, a lot frequently on social media. And they're using it to describe women, I'll say, um, particularly I'll say like black women, if that makes sense. Because I haven't seen that word used amongst like any other race, like not really white women as well. Because I see like when people are saying, like making those edits, like they include like Summer Walker, like Lotto, um, I think even SZA too. They include a lot of like female R&B artists and then like they also include Beyonce and everybody's like, oh, Beyonce is the mother bird, like she's the eagle. But then like kind of going back into like her album Lemonade, um I learned a little bit about like I think the whole cheating thing where it's like she did actually leave Jay-Z and I think Jay-Z was actually trying to I think um find her and Blue and like try to work something out together. So I guess she did attempt to leave, but I think like everybody is like nobody really listened, to the Lemonade album through and through. Like everybody's just thinking that, oh, like she got back with him and is like now she's a bird. But it's like I think it's more deep than that. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like going back on, seeing like I guess relationships, especially growing up, I think I read somewhere where it's like when it came to Beyonce's mom that apparently that her husband did cheat on her a lot, but she stayed in the relationship. I can't remember why, but maybe Beyonce saw that and thought maybe that's, I guess, the norm when it comes to relationship, at least working something out when it comes to, cheating. But yeah, I just think that I'm not really sure if I could call Beyonce a bird, but it's very, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I, to my knowledge, Beyonce, when she made her self-titled, um, on the deluxe, and the video for 7-Eleven was all the footage that she had while she was running away from Jay-Z with Blue. And that was the moment that you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I've been recently like seeing a lot more like bird propaganda against Beyonce. Um, and it that is true that this term is really only mainly used for women of color, really. I don't see a lot of white women being called birds or like, white presenting women, really. Um, and honestly, I think that's a whole nother conversation of like the intersectionality of like feminism and women of color being neglected more so than white women. Um, and I feel like this is where things like like white women tears like comes from, or like even like the really like white savior like focus type of like subgroup, I guess, like the
Yeah.
Chapel Roans and like the Brittany Broskis and like all those people. Like I think that's definitely that could be a whole nother conversation in itself. Um, but I think Beyonce's case is very like, I think it's swept under the rug, and at the same time it's like one of the most like widely known cases of like the traumatized woman, basically, um I'm sure, as most of us know, like Jay-Z groomed her from a very young age. And amongst him, like many other rappers and, other male singers and everything, like grooming their now known wives and everything. Um, and I think, again, it's one of those things where you have to be really like understanding of where she's coming from now at this point. She has like what, 3 kids. She is known for like being, one, Beyonce, and two, like being Jay-Z's wife. Like that's his like partner, that's his like co-worker too. Like they have projects together, they do things together. And at the same time, it's like I think with all of this, like Beyonce's like I don't know, queen status is like kind of going down a little bit the more that people see this case of like the trauma that men can endure on women. And also at the same time, I think Jay-Z's career is also really going downhill with like the whole like thing about Diddy and Kanye and all that, and you know, whatever. But uh yeah, I think it's another one of those things that's like people focus so much on Beyonce and like what she may or may not know, what she may or may not have done, um, more than Jay-Z's obvious wrongdoings, like to her and to, I'm sure, a lot of other women, you know, not even just like cheating, but, other things.
Exactly. And I also remember seeing, someone saying that, well, people, of course, been suggesting that like she should have divorced him, like, they shouldn't have stayed together, she shouldn't have gone back with him. But then I also think about it, if Beyonce were to divorce Jay-Z, I don't know if Beyonce would be able to find someone like with her level of fame, but also the amount of money she makes. And this kind of also goes into like, dating somebody on your level. Like, mm, because I remember Beyonce, I think she made a video dedicated to Jay-Z. I think you may know this, where she had said, like, you taught me to, be the woman I am, or to be the woman, I'm becoming to be. And it's the fact that, a grown man, like, he groomed her, is the fact that a grown man is, I don't know if this is the right word, teaching or showing her how to become a woman. It's like, Beyonce never really got the chance to, I guess, like, really, um, I don't know if maybe being independent at first is mm, or maybe just to like really develop on her own for real. Because again, like she was so young getting into that relationship. And again, even right now at this age, is like, I'm still trying to find myself. So being, yeah, I just think Beyonce wasn't maybe able to find herself really. So again, like with her identity, like not maybe, yeah, her identity tying with Jay-Z, it's like, I don't think she can really break free out of that, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's definitely hard for people to realize that at this age and like even younger, one it's hard to imagine like being trained from a young age to sing, to like do all these things, to be like vocally talented as she is, and like getting pushed out into the world like in hopes to be big, like all of that, like going to auditions and like singing in front of people, and your mom basically being your manager, making clothes for you, like performing at recitals, concerts, whatever she did, pageants. um it's like if you combine that, the hardworking lifestyle that you have as a kid, and also seeing your mom and dad, like one of them like being cheated on or like cheating on each other, whatever the case may be, um as soon as you like are in this bubble of people that are trying to do the same thing as you, like career wise, like make it big, and then somebody comes in, a male figure, and is like, I can give you everything you promise, I'll be there for you, I'll be your mentor, which I'm assuming that's what Jay-Z probably uh prompted to her, proposed. Of course she was going to be like, well, like let's do it, like, you're going to be my mentor, like yes, like, and then later, like, I fall in love with you, whatever, whatever. um and of course she's not going to realize from the beginning, like, I'm being groomed, like this man is preying on me. And I'm sure also, to Miss Tina Knowles' knowledge, like she may have been the kind of woman that she didn't want to pull her child away from an opportunity, and didn't realize maybe how detrimental this could be for her. um and that also comes from her own trauma too. Like, it's just generational. It's generational. And I really hope that like she is teaching her kids to not be the same way as her. I mean, from the videos that I've seen, she seems like an okay mom. Um, but that's the thing with like you have to learn from your mistakes as just a person, but like womanhood wise, you cannot let your daughters go through the same thing that you did, because it's just going to perpetuate the same cycle of like the self-hatred, like the self disrespect, and the just like general like unhappiness that you might potentially end up in.
And that also goes into resentment as well. Like I've seen many TikToks before where where women will openly, talk about, the resentment they have against their mother. And this can also goes into, their moms prioritizing the relationship they have with either their husband or maybe, their, what is it, like stepfather, and not really, how to say this, like not be there for their, daughters, how it's the man over the daughter, and it's not really. So I'm trying to articulate this where it's like I've seen a TikTok before where a woman had said that, like, that she said that you should prioritize your husband more than your own kids. And people in the comments were, saying that, like, you really shouldn't be doing that. Like, it's always your kids first. And I think it's also another thing where it's like, I think people don't really see, kids, like children, as people as well, where it just they see them as just like these little things where it's just like they can, I guess, control them, or it's like they have to, I guess, like where parents think that, like, how to say this, like, oh, like they have to, I guess, earn their respect, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, but it's like, again, like when she had made that TikTok, everybody was like, like you shouldn't be doing that, as a mother. And like people were also calling her a bird in the comments as well, like saying that, oh, like that's bird behavior, that's bird mentality. And like again, like I think she was also talking about maybe her parents' dynamic as well. I can't remember if it was like her mom prioritizing her husband, but then like again she was explaining that if, the mom prioritizes her husband, then it's like then they can also work together to, I guess, like help the kids and not neglect them in a sense. But I don't know if that really does make any sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand. I can definitely understand like both perspectives. I think of course it is like it's important for you to have a good relationship with your father or husband, not your father, but the father of your kids or your husband, or like in order to make the child's life better, of course. And that's perfectly fine. Um but I think what also should be happening before is that you should be knowing the person that you're having kids with. And I feel like that would be the time to really like nourish your relationship in order for them to trust you and for you to trust them, that like if you were to have a kid, you can rely on the other person to uh properly take care and nourish this child, you know. um of course there may be some situations where that's just not happening for some reason, that you just don't know this person and they're, you know, somehow still around to help you take care of the kid. um in which case, yes, it's feasible that you would focus on, you know, your relationship with this guy. But if you don't really know who this is, like, and you don't fully trust them to raise your kid, then the child should be the priority. And saw, I actually just saw this TikTok. It was like a skit. It was basically showing, like you said, like mothers choosing their boyfriends or husbands over the child. And it was basically like scenarios, simple like scenarios, like the daughter was like, "Oh, we were supposed to go to the movies today," and the mom was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Like me and so have plans today, but next weekend, like I got you." And the kid was just like, never mind. Like when a kid starts to feel like their mom, like the daughter starts to feel like their mom is not on their side, I think that also it one creates resentment in the mom, or like towards the mom, and two, I feel like that also creates like more um anger towards other women as you get older, because it's like it could be anger like seeing another woman like be in a situation with a guy where they're just like focused too much, or like they're being a doormat, or whatever it is. But it could also be like this this girl really being angry at like women just deciding to do what they want to do, basically. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I don't know how to explain it, but it just creates like an angry woman. And it's a lot of it's a lot of trauma, it's a lot of resentment. It's a lot of what can turn into like possibly like guilt for maybe asking for your needs from a man, not wanting to maybe stand up for yourself for a man, like ending up being submissive, that kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Where it's like going back to the whole Cassie and Maddie thing, how um when it comes to Cassie and her case, of course, like in season three, I remember, her, talking with Nate over dinner about like how she wants, a bunch of flowers for her wedding and everything. And, but Nate was saying, but how are you gonna pay for the flowers? Like you don't have any money. Like, most of the money I guess you get is like from me. And so she was saying that like, she wanted to, I guess, get on OnlyFans and make the money from there. And I remember seeing the comments where somebody was talking about the dinner scene and someone was like, wow, like Cassie's starting to, speak up for herself more. Like, Cassie is, I wouldn't say confident, but she's, I guess, standing her ground. Where before you see in the previous seasons, where Cassie is just kind of like, I wouldn't say going with the flow, but whatever somebody tells her anything or to do something or whatever, like she would do it. But again, it's out of validation. And so I think about also when it comes to Maddie's case as well, where people were also saying like, oh, Cassie wants to be Maddie so bad. And I think about that too, and I'm like, I feel like I should have rewatched season two, but I think about it, I'm like, does Cassie really want to be Maddie? Or does she just want her man, if that makes sense? Like, does she just want Nate to herself? But it's like, it's so confusing because it's like, we don't know where that plotline from where Cassie wasn't really interacting with Nate as much to now that she is with Nate, and almost being married to him, while Maddie, of course, is just like kind of on her own, where she's, focusing on herself, of course, and everything like that. And I think this also ties into the whole like white woman versus, of course, like woman of color thing, where how literally in society white women are seen as pure, as feminine, but when it comes to women of color, it's like we're not seen as pure for some reason. How, and really I don't know where that comes from, and that's something I really do want to look into more. But of course most of like the rules that are set in society are made by white men. So of course they're gonna see white women as pure, while us it's very much different. But I know how when it comes to Maddie, it's like whenever she does get, I guess, like angry or stuff like that, or I think there was some criticism with, with her character where it's like, of course, she is Latina, but people were saying that like, oh, Sam puts her in this like angry Latina, oh, what is it, stereotype where it's like she's seen as spicy and stuff like that and whatnot. But I don't know if when it comes to Cassie or even Sydney, the actor, where she is presenting herself, in a very angry emotion, like female rage, again, like I said, like in season two, she was getting a lot of praise for expressing a lot of emotion. Um, Back then, and people were saying like like, oh, she's the next it girl, like like she's got it, like the way she acts, like the way she conveys emotions, stuff like that. But now it's like things have changed, and now people are, I guess, uplifting Alexa more. And people are like, "Oh, Alexa should have more, fame than Sydney, or be on the same level as her, get the same roles as Sydney as well." I think with Alexa, she's just choosing, like picking and choosing. She wants to live that quiet life, that private life, but at the same time, it's like, again, like how I'm sorry, Alexa has expressed before how when it comes to certain roles, she will be rejected because, most of those roles will go to, women with blue eyes and who are blonde, hence white women. So there's not really much, I guess, like roles offering for Latino women like her. That definitely, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I think I think the if we're just talking about the conversation between Sydney and Alexa, I feel like it's definitely divided now in the Euphoria like fandom that most people see Sydney as like the runt, I guess, of the litter. Now that she's been in so much controversy, she's dating Scooter Braun, like she is doing all these projects that are pandering to the male gaze. Like she made that like bathwater ad, she did that like eugenics ad, like it was so many things like piled on top of each other, and then like just her like being a, I guess, contradictory person, like with her movie Christie, who was, about a masculine lesbian boxer, and there was like she did a lot of training for that role, I'm sure, as you've seen, but uh in the end nobody wanted to see it, and not even her male audience wanted to see it, because they did not care. Of course, they don't care about the representation of a basically a butch woman being powerful and strong and like making it in the boxing like industry basically. um and her female audience didn't want to see it because she does not stand for any of those things that she's like pretending to represent. And I feel like people have I feel like people have also tied in the show's like storyline with Sydney and Alexa as if they are like Maddie and Cassie. Because we don't really know anything about Alexa's like politics or views or anything that she stands for. For all we know, she could be the same as Sydney and just hide it better. And me personally, I wouldn't put it past her, knowing like how Latinas are and how like the general like Hispanic community is. Like they're very conservative. Um, and I don't know if you know, but like Selena, the famous like Tejano singer, she was very conservative actually in her views, but she was still loved because back then conservatism wasn't like, it wasn't like a fuck women, like all women are whores and all this, and like it wasn't like that. It was literally just like being conservative at its core, like wanting to preserve tradition basically, and especially in like a I don't know which one she was, Catholic or Christian, but um she wanted to keep that. And it honestly would not be shocking to me if Alexa came out to be like that, if she ever did. um but I think people have like taken everything that Sydney has kind of vaguely shown that she's like against, with her body language and interviews and like the projects and the ads that she does. Everything opposite of that, I think they've put to Maddie and assumed that like she's not Maddie, Alexa, and assumed that she's very like progressive and stands up for people and all that. um and I think, one, that's a whole another conversation of like the parasocialism of it all, really. um and two, I feel like it's it's no secret that the women that focus more on their male audience, um they don't last very long. They don't. Because women are the ones that indulge in pop culture. Uh, Women are mainly the ones that are like chronically online. They know all the micro trends. They know all the things that are like being pushed for like advertisements. They know all the celebrities. Like every person that I know that is very super like into like internet and pop culture are either women or like people from the LGBTQ community. And it's not men. Men are like focused in their own world. They don't give a shit. All they care about is either like, you know, cars and all this like stupid shit, or they're on the other side of the spectrum, uh, listening to red pill content, basically. Um, so I think, yeah, it's very telling seeing seeing a person like Sydney Sweeney being super super like high up in like the praise factor, and just like so quickly it like got to her head, I feel like. And now everyone hates her. Like under the like Euphoria Instagram and like the ads that are focused on her, all the comments are like, this is not what the fans want to see. Like no one wants to see this. Like where's the other girls? Like, you know, all of that. So I think it is very interesting. I feel like Euphoria is like, it's a whole case study in itself, really.
No, it literally is like so much has changed since season two has came out and now with season three, and it's like people really do like I've seen comments before where people are like, "Oh, Sydney, she's not acting. This is who she really is. Like she is really Cassie in real life." And although we don't know these people personally, it's just what they, of course, like spew out into the media, like what they say, of course, like with their political views or like what they do, like who they partner with and stuff like that. Like it's very telling. And it's like, I feel like it's only on the surface level for real. It's like, who knows? She could come out with something else very MAGA as well, too. But, I also think about, going back to the Christie movie as well. I just feel really bad because it's like for Christie, her story was being told, and I don't know who casted Sydney or who thought, Sydney would be the one to portray Christie. Everybody was like, oh, you should get, the actor, what's her name, Ruby Rose into it. Get an actual, lesbian to play Christy, get an actual, woman who's a boxer, who has, knowledge in boxing and stuff like that to portray Christy. And I I think with Sydney, before the whole like Jean ad had happened, she used to actually, I think, like post like I guess like things she would do like, fixing cars, and then also like she does have knowledge in MMA, like, in boxing and stuff like that. But we don't really see that as much. Like I don't really check up on her Instagram, but it's like we really don't see that as much where she is expressing like, very yeah, like activities like that. And it's just like now I guess her content has really switched to the male gaze, if that makes sense. And speaking about, of course, like how the male audience doesn't really, follow up anymore, doesn't continue. Um, yeah, cooking with Kaya, how basically with her content, um, whenever she would post a cooking TikTok, in the middle of it, she would be like, I'll learn how to, make this or follow through, with this recipe, or somebody will take your man, or I will take your man if you don't learn it. And like there would be women, of course, who would say like, what she's saying isn't really right, but then like there would be men, of course, defending her, talking about like, oh, you guys are just jealous, you guys. And that's so crazy because it's like when a woman speaks out against a woman who is, engaging and pandering into, the male gaze, men would just come in and talk about, like, oh, you guys are jealous. And it's just like, where are you guys coming from? Like, what? Like, and it's just like, I remember even seeing a TikTok before where, sorry, like a female content creator had said, like, she had, I think, posted on her Instagram or something where she had said, like, oh, should I get like a pixie cut, And most of the women in the comments were saying, like, yes, you should get it. Like, it will look so good on you. But then she had said men in the comments were saying that, like, why are you guys telling her to get a pixie cut? let her hair be long, like she doesn't need a pixie cut, like this is what women do. And it's just again like, where are you guys coming from? Like just out of nowhere. Not too long ago, I remember I had seen a post where on Instagram where, women had opened up about getting a breast reduction, how she had opened up about getting a breast reduction. And there were also men in the comments talking about like, why would you do that? Your breasts are God's gift, like, keep them the way they are. And it's just like, whoa, like, woman can't do anything without a man. Literally, like, why would a man be there? So literally, women can't do anything without a man, like, just coming in and just leaving his unsolicited, like, comment or opinion. It's just like, it's not needed. So it's like, yeah, back with like cooking with Kaya, everybody was like, most of the men in the comments were talking about like, like, oh, you women are so jealous. Like, she's doing her own thing. Like, let her say what she wants to say. But then there was also some women defending her too, where some women were talking about, like, what she's saying isn't really bad. Like, like she's, I guess, for the girls or something like that. And then kind of I think Cooking with Kaya came out what like 2024. So of course like I guess like 2 years in, like especially I think like last year, where now there's comments where people are saying that oh Kaya fell off, that her videos aren't good as they used to. I don't check in with her, content, but I think she still does the whole like Cooking with Kaya dance, like she still posts cooking TikToks and stuff, but again, most of the comments would be like, yeah, like you fell off, like you're not as good as you used to be. And those comments were mainly coming from men. And so there was also this rumor about like how like now because she's not getting as much as engagement as she used to, now there's this rumor circulating that men are saying that like oh she went to Dubai to get shit on so she can get some money and stuff like that. And she even I think cleared that up. She was saying like I'm not going to Dubai to get more money and stuff. But then when there was a video of her crying, and she was actually crying about her I think sister's death, men in the comments were talking about like, oh, she's crying because she's not as famous anymore. She doesn't get, a lot of views. And the fact that she had to come out and say like, I'm not crying because I fell off or anything. It's really because of my sister's death, which is insane. So it shows you really that when you don't, I guess, what is it, satisfy a man anymore, when you don't satisfy men in general, really, that it's like they replace you or they see you as disposable or something like that. So it's like with Kaya having much of a, male audience, it's like, and now I guess they're getting tired of her, they're kind of like throwing her away. You know that like meme where it's like that Toy Story meme where it's like, oh, like I'm done playing with you now, you know?
I did not see the Cooking with. I have not also checked up on Cooking with Kaya for a while. Um, Me personally, the reason for that is because I was not really a fan of the way that she presented her content. I love watching cooking videos. I love seeing women cook, like not in like a misogynist way, but like I just love seeing like women be passionate about cooking. Um and also as one that doesn't cook as much. One that doesn't cook as much. Um I want to learn from a woman, really. I don't want to learn from a man. And it's for me it's like it's the same as like going to a male doctor. Like I'm sure they know the same kind of knowledge, maybe sometimes more, but I just feel comfortable with a woman doing it. Um I I think I think her content like and also like with Sydney Sweeney's um Sydney started like posting that kind of like the car stuff and like the MMA things right after I think like either season 1 or 2, um somewhere around there. And it was literally like when she was like starting to like rise in popularity. Um and that was what really drew a lot of women and men, right? Men were seeing like, oh, she likes all the like the boy things. And she's cool, like she's a cool girl. Um and I think men like kind of hooked on to that, and like also the fact that she's like a conventionally attractive woman, you know. She is also like the, I would say, the epitome of like the white supremacist dream, really. Um, and I think she took that and like she just ran with it. That's when she started doing the bath water. That's when she did the Gene ad, like all of that. She saw that her male audience was hooked, right? And she was like, well, I have the women, so maybe I can get the men, and then, I'll be big. Maybe that's what's going through her head. I don't know. But she already had the female audience because, like, everyone loved her. Like, everyone loved her acting. She was so good as Cassie. Like, she knows how to play Cassie. And people were watching her other things, like Everything Sucks, and, um, just like getting to know her more as a person. And I think when she finally got her male audience with like who she is, like, not who she is, but like her personal interests. Um, I think that's when she realized that maybe I can tap into this market and, make money from them, and I'll make it big. And I think along the way that she also tried to adapt to the current like mindset, I guess, of the male community right now. Like I said, the red pill content and the manosphere type of people that like to listen to those things, um which is why she's been so like MAGA coded, really. She has not said anything specific like, I love Trump, not that, but she has said things that have kind of alluded to the fact that she enjoys Trump, you know um and i think um I think Cooking with Kaya is kind of along the same realm, of course there were some women that like didn't like her content. There were some women that were in support of her because uh you could see it as like, it's somebody who seems super like sex positive being a like teaching figure for people, really, not just women, but like for everybody. Um and then of course like men were hooked onto the fact that, she would start off every video with like shaking her ass and everything. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with that, she would follow it up with like, if you don't cook this, or like if you don't make this for your man, then I will, something like that. And I think that's where people like started to become really super divided about like, is it right for her to be saying that? Like, is it necessary for her to be saying that? And of course men were like, oh, I don't, I don't care, like. And I think that's what really splits up women, I guess. The women that want to gain the attention and the validation from men versus the women that don't care about that, and the women that just want to see a woman choosing to do something for herself, Um and I think that's what ultimately creates this kind of like this like battle between women. And it ultimately comes down to like the reasoning of like, why would a man be there, like, exactly. And it further divides us, and it makes us focus on each other, and it takes away the focus from like the man being like, just the man like, spewing something and being like, oh, let the women like shake her ass, let the women have big titties, let the women have big asses, even though like they can see that the woman is like doing something that's the opposite of that because she wants to. They will encourage that traditional notion of like what a woman looks like, let your hair grow down, don't cut it into a pixie, you're gonna look ugly, um and it just continues to further divide us, and also further separate us from men, because they just cannot like understand a woman's choice, really. They can't understand and be empathetic towards a woman doing something for herself and not for a man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. And it's like I also think a little bit more about also the female gaze, having a woman audience. Um, this also kind of sorry goes back into what we were discussing about earlier, where how content, well, maybe for my algorithm, I'm not sure how it is for, other women and their algorithms, but for me, most of the content I see regarding to women is like very again uplifting, like again, focus on your goals, your ambitions, don't worry about a man, be independent, get your own, have your own bag and stuff like that. And I also kind of tie this a little bit into, of course, motherhood as well. And I feel like it's very complex where it's like, I have seen comments before where, where a woman will make a TikTok saying like, I completed my degree without having any kids in a way, like I got my bachelor's with no kids, master's with no kids and stuff like that. And, there would be, I guess, a woman to comment who is a mother herself, and she would say, like, oh, I got my master's while I had my child, or, I went to school while after maybe I gave birth to my child and, still working towards my degree. And I would see there's some people in the comments who would be like, like, this TikTok is not about you. Yeah, no, it's crazy, but people in the comments will be like, this TikTok is not about you. Like, again, this is, I guess, celebrating women who are child free without without having kids in a way, like having kids, not as a distraction while, getting to their goals and stuff. And I remember seeing that conversation, and I remember I think a woman had replied to one of the comments saying like, why can't you guys uplift mothers who, do the same thing what child-free women do? Like, like, sure, I'm a mother, but I still have my degree. I still got my education. Why is it different for a woman who is child-free and she has her education and stuff like that? And I think about that too, and it's just like, both women, no matter what, at the end of the day, they both got their degrees with kids or no kids. Like at the end of the day, both got their degrees and stuff, And I also kind of think about it from my own personal experience as well, where my mom, before she had passed away, she was never able to go to college. I'm not sure what the reasoning was. I'm not sure if it was because of like financial aid or something like that, but she was never able to go to college. So my dad, on the other hand, he was able to get his master's, but he got his master's right around when after my oldest sister was born. So it's like, I think about that whole again like stay at home mom role and then like, having kids and stuff like that without having an education to fall back on or even a business or even a job while you're, again like still relying on a man's, resources and finances. It's just like, I wouldn't want to try to put those type of women down because I was also raised by a single mother myself. So I would never put down another single mother because I was also raised by one. And I've seen, the hardships where it's just like finances aren't always right. Like, you're taking care of so many kids and stuff like that. And I just think, when I do see comments where I guess a young girl where she's saying like, like, oh, I do want to be a mother. I do want to have kids, I want to be married and stuff like that. I would see, most responses will be like, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want to be married? Are you sure you want to have kids? Like, don't you want to get an education first? Like, don't you want to maybe try something out? Don't you want to maybe like find yourself? And I feel like young women who have those desires, I think should listen to women who are already, stay-at-home moms who are already married but don't have, anything to fall back on because I have seen TikToks before where stay-at-home moms and like wives will talk about, like I wish, I was able to at least get my education done or at least, start a business or have something to fall back on. And they will even advise young women to be like, don't get married young, don't have kids young, find yourself, do what you have to do, like yeah, it's a very complex thing. And again, like just seeing more content where it's just like be be single, be child free more. Um, don't have kids yet, don't be married yet, just be on your own. It's like I guess maybe there isn't really a space for people who I guess are mothers. I don't know. It's just like I don't know if it's a putting down thing or maybe it's just because again like we're just now so more independent most of women like I know are just now becoming more independent, you know? And this also goes into relationships as well, where again, being single, how there's nothing wrong with being in a relationship, and there's also nothing wrong with being pregnant. Like, if you want to have kids, like, go ahead. If you want to be in a relationship, that is also okay too. But it's not to like generalize like single people, but like, like nowadays single people are jealous of people who are in relationships. I think it's just like, I think most people are like, if you see having a boyfriend an accomplishment, then like that's wrong all the way, you know? And I've also seen TikTok before where some woman would be like, I would never be friends with a woman who is in a relationship right now, who has a boyfriend. Um, I just think, I don't know, like we hear so many different perspectives from so many people, and it's just like, then I don't know what's miserable or like what's good. Like, is it bad to be in a relationship, or is it a good thing? Is it bad to be a mother, or is it a good thing, you know? So it's so many things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so confusing right now. I would hate to still be in high school at this time because like you said, there's so many different perspectives on how to grow up as a woman, whether to be career focused or family focused. Um I think I would say that I feel like one of the perspectives that it comes from is like not wanting to do anything for a man, really. Like there's a community on TikTok of women that just see every aspect, like being in a relationship or having kids or like, you know, helping helping a man, like, do his job or like making him lunch or whatever. Like all of those things are inherently embarrassing for people that see that as like bad, really. um and I think those are the same people that are like on the other side of the spectrum, like fully support women, like doing whatever they want to do. If they want to do OnlyFans, if they want to do sex work, like they can do that. If they want to get their college degree, they can do that. If they want to be self-employed, they can do that. If they want to travel the world and like, just see everything, like they can want to do that, but they cannot be with a man. They cannot fall in love with a man. They cannot choose to settle down and have a family because those things are, I think, one, seen as inherently like traditional and like conservative.
Mm,
And
there you go.
two, those things are ultimately ultimately like including a man in their lives and like fully like being conscious about another man's feelings. um and I think on the other side of that, where like people really want to have a family and they don't really like care or worry about like education. um I think most of the time, from what I see, those people are either very privileged and lucky to have that lack of thought, really. Which is like no shade to them. Like it's a good thing to be privileged. Like I think we use privileged as like, a backhanded type of like term to like say like you do not understand the struggle, and like being in a struggle is an honor, basically. But it's not a bad thing to be privileged. We all, I'm sure, want to be privileged and lucky and wealthy. Um, but it is a privilege regardless to only think about like, oh, I really want a family and, I don't really need an education because, I'm okay. Like my family will be my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, and I think, the other side of that is also like women who are also came from a not super well off background. Like I feel like it's like privileged people and like uneducated people. Um
Exactly.
I think I do think while it's not it's not an issue to have a child, like period, if you want to have the child, like do you, congrats. But I think there's also a lot of people that see a kid as like a problem solver, and like a problem solver for either like life or like internally, you know? Um, and I think women, like, they see, like you said, they don't see children as people, like the humans that they will grow up into, and also the people that they are, even at a young age, you know? They have their own thoughts and emotions and their own way of communicating that we, I think, as a society have neglected for so long and still continue to. Like, we just choose not to understand children, really. Um, and it's sad because when we don't do that, they turn out to be uneducated, emotionally uneducated, um, girls and boys. And that's, I feel like that's kind of how we got to the socio-cultural society that we are in right now. Um, Women who are ignorant, who continue to perpetuate the misogyny, the patriarchy, um, women who feel like the choice to do harmful things to themselves is feminist, um, and men who perpetuate like the harmful traditional notions of like how a woman should look, how, like, what their position should be in life, whether they should be at home or like uh cooking, or not be so like career oriented, or just the men that hate women, like, overall, like they think that chasing after a woman is a waste of your time, basically. um so it's really hard to be right now in a society that is so aggressive, really. I feel like a couple
Yeah.
years ago it was really like sensitive, you know? Like, people were really sensitive to other people's like decisions and feelings, you know? It wasn't as much like pressure, but I feel like it slowly became so much more aggressive and assertive and like possessive, really, you know? And I think that came with, I mean, the presidency, really. He's everywhere on X or Truth Social or whatever it is, like telling his truth, you know, about how we're gonna bomb Iran and how we're gonna the women are doing this, like my team is so ignorant, or he's winning too much, or whatever the hell he says now. Like, it just puts us in a confused state that we are just like, well, he's crazy, like, let's fight against ourselves, you know? I feel like that's kind of what it is right now. And we just like we don't know what to do. I think we as adults don't know what to do. I think the kids don't know what to do because we don't know what to do. Like, it's just it's very rough. It's very rough to be a woman, I would say, right now.
No, I completely agree. Like everything right now just feels so confusing. And that's what also like what is it contributes to, how sometimes I would feel lost. Like it's so weird. And I feel like there's also this like ageism that's going on, um, especially online too, where it's like when it comes to women and especially older women too, um, say like I don't know, it could be like a throwback post talking about I don't know, maybe like 2016 or like, maybe like 2012, like maybe a 2010s post, and there would be some women who would be talking about like, oh, how their life was, in 2016 or in 2015 or whatever. And bro, you would see under the comments someone would be like, oh, unc or auntie. And that person who commented about their experience is like 26 or like in their early 30s, you know. And I remember, how the internet was like before Trump, how really people were saying that like, hey, like being in your 30s is not old. Like you're so young, you're still young, you know? And now it's just like we're in a time where it's just like being in your 30s, especially as a woman, like being an older woman, it's just like it's seen as, she doesn't have much value to her life, that, she's just seen as I don't know how older women are portrayed, but it's just like again, it's just like she's not seen as viable or just not worthy, if that makes sense, you know? And we also see that in media too as well, where it's just like how they make older women seem, how can I say this? Like, there have been some films and TV shows where they make older women seem bitter or feel like, their life is not going well, that they're struggling and stuff like that, if that makes sense. And then, like, it would be like a younger woman who, is, I guess, put in the spot a little bit more. Like, I don't know, it's like seeing online, especially, I've seen TikToks before where some people will be like, oh, older women are so toxic or so bitter towards, younger women, especially in the workplace. I've never felt that before, but it's like I'm not gonna put down somebody else's experience, what they've experienced from an older woman. But it's just like, I've also seen other TikToks where some people will say like, older women are the type to tell you to stay in an abusive marriage or, a toxic relationship and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know. It's like, and then like there'll be some older woman in the comments talking about like, oh no, like I would never do that, or like, like I'm thriving or stuff like that. And it's just like, I really do miss the internet, before Trump. Like you said, everything was much more sensitive and how everything is just now more aggressive. And it's just like it makes me want to stay away from the internet much more. Like, back then I just felt like everything was just very, I guess, a little bit more positive, I will say, but it's like, yeah.
Yeah. I I think while you were explaining your point, I feel like my mind kind of took me back to the Barbie movie where Barbie like sits down at that bench at the bus station and the old woman is sitting next to her and she's like, "You're so beautiful." And the woman is like, she's not even like bitter or like negative or anything. She says like, "Thank you, like I feel it." I think something like that. And I feel like that was such an important scene to show, like even if on the surface it seems like unnecessary. Um and it makes sense coming from a woman director. Um it really showed like the importance of like knowing that it's okay to age. It's okay to get older. It's okay to be
Yes.
sharing your knowledge about life to the public, if not to your friends or family or whatever. Um and I think it's a very it's just a constant cycle of like children and old people being forgotten. Um we no longer listen to old people, really, to elderly people, my elders. Um I actually saw a video about this girl explaining that same point, like we don't listen to our grandmas and our grandpas and like the older generation anymore. We listen to people in our same age group. We ask people in our same age group for advice. And that may be because like maybe the older generation's views are super outdated. Maybe they're on the same like conservative wavelength that we are deciding that we don't like. um Maybe it's just because they're old and they're not living in this generation and they could never understand. um but I think ultimately it still is important for people to understand the messages that they give us, because there is wisdom in age. And there is beauty in a woman aging. And I see posts all the time of like people will post pictures of like well-known celebrities like Cher. People, I think I saw this post like a somebody posted a picture of Cher like in the 70s versus Cher in her 70s, and they were like, she looks so good. And I was thinking like it wouldn't be a problem if she looked like she was in her 70s. Like it shouldn't be a big thing. I don't know if you can hear the car honking, but sorry. um it shouldn't be a big thing for a woman to age and to look like she's aging. I feel like all the time right now we see people are taking like Botox, they're doing fillers, they're doing like jaw shaving, they're doing all kinds of these things to their faces and bodies. in order to look like they are still young. And I feel like that comes from, one, obviously a very patriarchal, you know, perspective, wanting to appeal to the male gaze, even if you're doing it for yourself, it seems like. Because if there was no male gaze, you wouldn't be thinking about it, you know? Um, I feel like, I feel like, it also comes from a very, like, strangely pedophilic side, you know? And it's now starting from a super, super, super young age. Like, I don't know if you saw last year, but there was like a huge influx of kids going to Sephora and buying Drunk Elephant and
Yes.
the what was it called? Like, oh, Summer Fridays. Like those,
Yes.
yeah, like those types of things. Like they were putting on retinol on their like 10-year-old faces. Like it was so
That's
crazy to see.
crazy.
And like
Yeah.
it it was everywhere. Like I remember me going into Sephora and seeing like a bunch of like 10, 12-year-old kids, like elementary school kids, middle school kids, like in Sephora being like, "Oh, I want to try this. Like this is so good for your skin." Like you don't need that at all. Like please. And everyone was like so like just like shocked at the like fact that all these kids were here, like in every Sephora too, almost every Sephora. Um, and it was like, one, these kids don't have good role models nowadays. Like there's no, like I said, they're very neglected. There's no third space for kids. There's no like justice or like there really any more like children's place or anything like that, because they have a phone now. They can go on TikTok. They see all the things that you and I see that are really catered to us, but they think that that's what they have to follow too. And it's usually like things that will keep you younger, things that keep you more trendy and hip and like with the times, and you know, the anti-aging stuff basically. Um and it it really hurts to see, because I can't imagine like being a little girl and like seeing these kinds of things and feeling like I have to adhere to that. Um
Mm.
and I was actually reading a not reading, was I watching it? I was watching a video on the like fantasy of like Disney movies, like older Disney movies, like the Disney Channel original movies. And the like Nickelodeon shows and like all of that, and there was an aspect they were saying that was very like fantasy like, you know, it was something that inspired kids to uh either be like, you know, have the fashion like Lizzie McGuire, or like be as, you know, cool as like what's her name, as like Amanda Bynes, you know. The fantasy of like being a like pretty princess, or like being a really like famous person basically. And nowadays kids, all they have is like stuff. They just have stuff to buy. This is the new thing that you need to buy in order to feel like this. You have to get this in order to have your outfits look good and everything. They're all things that are attainable. You know, once you get them, it's like you're just on to the next thing. And that's all there is as a kid right now. Like there's no fantasy, there's no kind of imagination, there's no inspiration. All there is you need to stay young, and you need to be hip, and you need to be cool, and you need to be relevant basically. And if you're not, you are just waste.
Exactly. Like, again, going back into the whole unk thing, those comments, it doesn't only apply to people in their like mid 20s to 30s. Somebody could comment that they're like, what, 17 or maybe even 19, and they will still get an unk comment. And I'm like, they're literally young? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know where it comes from, but it's just like, again, it just seems like everybody is so scared to age, and age is such a privilege. Age is such a blessing because again, like there's so many people who don't even make it past 20 or even 21 for real. So it's like being, how can I say this? Like, mm, nowadays on the news, you see literally kids, getting arrested for stabbing someone their age or having a gun or just being violent overall, and I just don't know where that like sudden just surge happened where it's just now kids are becoming more violent and stuff. I don't know if I sound like an old head or something, and I can't believe I'm saying that about myself, but it's just like it's a real concern because it's just like we don't know where it's coming from. And then like how you said again, like how most of these kids nowadays are not listening to their elders, not listening to older people who can really actually give them advice. Like, I definitely understand where people are coming from, how some older people do have outdated views and stuff. But it's like there are also some older people out there who do understand like your perspective, who do understand what is it like being a teenager, what is it like being a child, what is it like being a young adult. Like so much advice you can just get even for free on TikTok or even on YouTube, anywhere online. And it makes me sad to see that, man. And it's just like, yo, like it's crazy. And it's just like again, like these kids again just don't have any like good, I guess, kid influences or good like teen influences, like, especially like with teen media. One example for me it would be like with the show Baddies, how most of their audience is actually young black teens. It's nowhere anyone older. It's mainly majority of just young black teens. And it's insane to see that where it's just like now there's also things in the news where kids are being disrespectful to their teachers, being disrespectful to their what is it, parents and stuff like that. And just like again, it's like we're all saying where is this coming from, but then it's like you need to look at the parents as well. Why is your child going to Sephora at 10 years old? Why is your 14-year-old child fighting the teacher? What is going on? And it's just like we're really losing the plot nowadays. And it's just like there's also talks about education, changing, amongst kids where it's just like now kids are not reading as much, don't know how to write or read even, and it's just like people are saying it's really them phones, it's them iPads, and really it is. So it's just like things are really changing, and it's just I fear the future a little bit. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but I do fear the future a little bit, especially for the next generation coming up too. It's like, like, are things gonna change maybe once Trump does get out the office? Will there be some more changes within, what is it, within the education system and whatnot? And would maybe the internet even change too again? Like, since we're now living in a whole Trump under his administration, more people are coming out being racist, more people are coming out being, sexist, just a lot of misogyny, sorry, racism, and just like it's a lot of stuff going on the internet. And like again, with kids now having access to their phones, them books and stuff, it's just like they're gonna think most of that stuff is okay and whatnot. And also talking about what you were saying about, sorry, about like aging and everything. It's crazy how when it comes to body standards, especially when it comes to sorry, applying to women, that most of it comes from children, where it's like the white man really did create that body standard where it's just like you have to be small, you have to be blonde or something like that, where it's just like you can't be. Yeah, where it's just like the body standard, especially here in America, where it's just like you have to be skinny, you have to be small, you have to, almost literally look like a child. How it is with I can say for Black women, where it's just we're celebrated, of course, like having a full figure, celebrating our curves. And this kind of goes into the whole, like, say, the whole Victoria's Secret thing, the fashion show where Angel Reese, when she was selected to be an angel, there were people on TikTok talking about like how her body is not the image of Victoria's Secret, how she has so much curves, that she has an ass, that it's bad and stuff for her to have a butt and just to be full. And it's just like, again, like some of us still view women's bodies as, what is it? That it has to almost be just, again, just small, and it's wild.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And It's very interesting because I think Victoria's Secret was one of those brands that people looked at a couple years ago that they were like, you need to have more body inclusivity. Like, you should have more fully figured models, you need to have more black models, like you need to have, a diversity basically. Um and now it feels like we're kind of regressing, and again, that's conservatism. It's really like we just are absorbing the things that are most popular right now and kind of subconsciously putting it towards uh different aspects of like pop culture basically. Um and I think I think the lack of third spaces for kids also is really 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 concerning and really dangerous too. Because right now I feel like I'm on the Montgomery County subreddit, and I feel like all I see are posts like, oh, these kids are out in Rio, like, like causing a ruckus, and people are out in
Yes.
DC. I see these posts like maybe like bi-weekly, like kids are out in DC like causing havoc because they have nowhere to go. And I literally just saw a post yesterday actually, like about kids planning like a takeover where they just at like Wheaton Station, where they're just gonna go to Wheaton Station and just like be there. There's nothing to do. There's literally nothing to do. Like that is a transportation site. The kids are just gonna go over there and just like have a bunch of them be there and just take over. And it is definitely the parents. Like right now we're in the generation of like millennial parents are raising these teenagers. Um and the millennials, I think, were they were in a place where like they saw everything before the internet. Um and they, I think, were one of the people that saw the internet as like this new shiny thing, and they were really excited about it, right? Um and it like changed their whole lives, right? Whereas like you and me, we grew up like on the brink of the internet kind of like taking over, really. Like we were still going outside, we were still watching cable TV, we were still playing with the old toys, but we were also like we had access to the internet if, our parents let us, right? So it wasn't that all like super shiny and new. It was just like another part of our lives. And I feel like that's the discrepancy between us, millennials, and Gen Alpha, you know? Um, Gen Alpha, like, the internet is all they know. And they don't know, like, playing with toys. They don't know going outside. They don't know watching cable TV. They don't know waiting for your school to be called for you to have a day off? They don't know these things. And they have the privilege to just get on the phone and just, learn anything that they want to at just like a scroll of a thumb. But that becomes really dangerous as they get older because the phone is raising them, not the kid or not the parent. Um, and because the parent is like, maybe they've seen the early ages of the internet and they think that it's like okay, right? And they think that it's the same as before. um they'll just let them have the phone, and that's it. Literally, I've seen a grown, not a grown, but like a 7-year-old be put in a stroller, and while the mom is like getting her hair done, he will drop the phone and start screaming and crying, and the parent will literally give him the phone, and he stops screaming and crying. And she let this go on for like so long, and it was just like so jarring to see like the child has no like emotional regulation. They don't know what to do. The mom doesn't bother to learn how to properly take care of this child. All she knows is that the phone calms him down. The phone is his pacifier. All the kid knows is that the phone makes him happy, and that's really it. And um I think for girls it's actually like just as dangerous, if not more so. As for like the little boys too, uh boys of course are not learning how to treat women properly. They're not learning like outside etiquette. Same for girls. They're not learning outside etiquette. They don't know how to navigate like male relationships really. They don't know how to navigate like communication with like other people regarding, you know, possibly their trauma as like a girl. And like communication period is a problem right now. Um Even just like talking to like with each other, there's rarely any like face-to-face conversation nowadays, you know? It's not normal for you to strike up a conversation with a stranger anymore, you know? We can't do that. People will look at you weird because everything is done online, you know? That's the norm. So, it's really sad. It's really sad.
It is sad, and I think also when it comes to quarantine, really COVID really took that away for a lot of us when it comes to, our social skills and communication, where it's just like we really had to communicate with our peers through a whole screen. And I remember watching a TikTok where somebody had said, I don't think COVID really left. Like quarantine really didn't leave. Like I think we're still feeling the effects of quarantine nowadays. And it's even, kids younger than us, they also had to be in school literally over the phone too. That's how they also had to communicate as well. So it's like no wonder why their communication skills are also bad as well. And it's just this also ties into, how you talk about it. Also, I was gonna say, like other than quarantine, our skills, our social skills has become very bad because I'm the type of person I wouldn't mind going up. If somebody came up to me just strike a conversation, like I wouldn't really reject it, like I wouldn't really mind or anything. But it's just like again nowadays, it's just like if you do go up to somebody or want to try to be friends with somebody, it's just like yeah, like they will look at you weird. And like I've seen how people nowadays are, also saying like, um I don't want to have a lot of friends or I don't want to be friends with certain people or stuff like that. Like I don't know, maybe we're going through a time where it's just like like I wouldn't say maybe it's anti-friend, but it's like it's everybody's just kind of staying to themselves and stuff like that. I think that's what we're going through right now, where it's just like everybody's kind of staying to themselves. And I think when it comes to, oh, this is what I'm gonna say, like, especially with now kids nowadays and being on their phones more, especially on the computers and the iPads, of course, this thing called brain rot, I can't consume most of that. Like, I just think that's very overstimulating, but it's just like with them, they can easily consume it. And it's just like I remember seeing this TikTok where somebody had asked one of their little cousins, where it's just like their little cousin kept saying like, oh, 6 7 6 7, but then they had asked their little cousin, okay, what's after seven? And they couldn't say anything because they kept saying 6 7 6 7, but he kept asking, okay, what's after seven? So it's like these kids aren't really educated anymore because they get their education from the internet. So yeah, so it's like that is a bit concerning if a child doesn't know like what's after the number seven. But it's like yeah, like these kids aren't really being educated, and it's like it's most of these parents letting their kids, be educated through the internet. Just like how it was with quarantine, how most of these kids were being educated through a whole computer. Now it's like, and I think that also affects the whole writing thing, where it's just like I remember growing up as a kid, where it's just like I would also get like cursive packets and like I would, I was teaching myself how to, learn in cursive, write in cursive. But it's just nowadays, I think because of quarantine where a lot of, students couldn't write most of their responses, their essays and stuff, on paper and now kind of relying on the computer. I think that's where the whole, these kids can't write, thing comes from. But yeah, it just feels like I don't know if everything is doomed, but just hearing that TikTok where it's just like the child didn't know what comes after the number seven, I'm just like, yeah, like I don't know what else to expect really. But I do believe again it's really the parents, and then it also goes into of course young girls as well, where it's just like, um where these girls again like are getting content from say like an influencer who's telling them like, oh, this is how a man should treat you, or this is how, you should, again, back on the whole the pill content thing. I really didn't know pink pill was a thing. Like I didn't know pink pill content existed. And um and if that's the type of content, young girls are also consuming, where it's just like how to be more feminine, how to, I guess, attract a rich man, how to, do those type of things. And it's just like I think that does ruin also their development as well, going into womanhood as well, because it's just like, what is femininity? Like what really makes a woman feminine? You know what I mean? Like it's just things like that where it's just like, and but it's like the advice that you're giving on how to be feminine is just like, like you can't, I guess an example would be like, oh, like you can't share your opinion, or you can't speak back, you have to be submissive, you have to be, like silent, quiet, and I really do hope that's not what most girls are consuming, but if it is, it's really gonna ruin the whole development when it comes to, not only womanhood but also teenhood as well. Like again, exploring what your first relationship is like and stuff like that.
Right, right. I think I do think like as many like awful and terrible and very regressive things that are happening in, yeah, in our kids and also in like the really like community of women. I will say that I think we have definitely come a really long way from, you know since women were fucking created, uh in like the 60s and the 50s especially, in terms of course, like women's rights and also like social uh interactions and like social issues and things like that. I think really we have really created a sense of community within us and really united women all around the world, for the better, I feel like. um I do think it's definitely an issue of like just trying to like figure out what we can all agree on is best for like anybody and everybody, really. It's hard to put a label on something that like, this is what a woman should be, this is what a feminist should be, this is what a woman in this age group should be, and I don't think it should be any of those things. I don't think there should be a should be, there shouldn't be a
Thank you. Yeah.
box, there shouldn't be a mold, it shouldn't be anything. We should all have the same opportunities to do anything that we want to do. There shouldn't be any shame. Of course, there should be things that we all agree are harmful to not only us as women, but also like the perception of us like to other people. Not saying that we can control that. There's always going to be somebody saying something about us, but it's just important that we learn to do what is healthy, really, not like what we always want to do, but just do what is healthy for our community.
Exactly. And I think it's also, um, there needs to be more spaces, especially for, young girls and teens, who are trying to understand, like, I guess, again, what they consume online, on how, what it means to be a woman, or how to be a woman and stuff like that. But it's just like, no, like, again, let them be who they are, it's just like it's so many expectations. There are times where I feel like I'm not a woman, or I'm not feminine enough, and I don't know why, but and I think it's just, it really does come from online, and again, like what you consume. So it's just like, as long as how can I say this, where I feel like there is some content out there that does, provide, I guess, like maybe not like a guide, but maybe just be like, does, tell women and young girls to just like be themselves, like, like if you want to, again, like if you want to be in a relationship, that's okay, go ahead. If you want to be career focused, go ahead, that's okay, it's just like we shouldn't be confined to one thing, we shouldn't limit ourselves as women, like we are so much, and we can do so many things. And I just feel like that's what we're forgetting nowadays. It's just like we're really trying to put ourselves into a box, and then that's what I don't want to see. I really want us to really break out of that box, break out of what any type of what is it, like trope we're trying to be in. If it's trying to be more of a cool girl, if it's trying to be more of a conservative woman, if it's trying to be more of a free woman, it's just like do what you want. Really do what you want for real. Because it's this
Yeah.
patriarchy is just
Yeah.
it's very harmful. Yeah. So that's my conclusion.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
what's your conclusion? I guess this whole thing.
Yeah, this whole thing. Yeah. You know what? My conclusion is like femininity is what you want it to be. That's honestly the reason why I cut my hair is that I want my femininity to be defined, as I go on in life and not just what I feel like I've been conditioned to believe from a young age. Um so I I feel like it's made me look at every woman differently, and I really do feel like I am part of a community. And I'm so like I'm also really happy for you, like to see a really young woman like you doing all these different things and being super like career oriented and not being afraid to like put yourself out there. I really admire that, truly. Like it means so much to me just to see that kind of representation of like career oriented women and fearless women, really. So I really do commend you for that.
Oh my God, that means so much because again, just like going back on how some days I would not feel feminine a lot, I would feel like, maybe I should stop pursuing what I want to do, because it may, I don't know, in some way threaten people, really threaten men, or maybe intimidate men on like men on what I do. But like this is what I'm passionate in. This is really what I want. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to create the life that I want. And it's just like, I also want to thank you for coming on here and just like that really means a lot. But again, like I really do appreciate you for coming on here and just talking about literally what social media has been like kind of in a way, I don't know if destroying is the word, but like, again, like you said, just regression, sorry. But again, like I also commend you as well, and the fact that you're very passionate about this as well, and just being the true feminist that you are. And again, just trying to remind women that, like, again, like there's so much that we're consuming nowadays, but again, like it's really important for us to um remind ourselves that it's okay to be flawed. Not every woman is perfect. That every woman should just be themselves, really.
Exactly. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for having me and doing this with me. I don't, I, like I said, I don't really do anything important yet, but I'm very grateful.
Of course, no, again, like just to speak with another woman about takes like these is just what I appreciate because again, it's just like everybody's mindset nowadays is so different, but just like when you're able to connect with someone, especially another woman on things like this, that's just like that's what makes me happy. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, you have a good day and yeah.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.